days to visit some family, and yeah, like it was like a really like emotional visit for good. Uh, but I was super tired. Also, in a way, like seeing people and family that you haven't seen in a while. It kind of like drains you, not in a bad way, of course, but yeah, this weekend I was like, yeah, I'm staying and just watching Twin Peaks again.
Okay.
uh,
All right.
and I pass it to Sean.
Hi. I think this weekend will be the first weekend in a couple of months we haven't had to travel between LA County and Orange County. So I think we're actually going to stay home this weekend, which will be nice. So that's it. I mean, I don't have too much planned. Nothing having to do with the remodel. So we're pretty set. We're gonna relax. Pass it over to you, Ivy.
Thanks, Sean. I haven't really thought about my weekend yet, but maybe I will do some reading with the visa requirements and the current travel restrictions in Europe, if and see if I can go to ECC. So yeah.
Yes.
But I'm not very positive about it because I just saw that in France they only accept vaccinated tourists from my country. So, but I'll read about the other countries like Spain probably. So yeah, that's my plan for the weekend, and I pass it to Juan.
Thanks, Ivy. Um, yeah, I am packing because I will go to Peru and on Monday. So yeah, that's like I'm super happy about that. I am going to get to know Machu Picchu in the
Wow.
like 15 days, and yeah, that's really motivating. And that's it. I also want to go to the HCC, and I will do like everything I can to be able to enter to Europe. I don't know who hasn't.
Edu.
Edu.
So, plans for the weekend. I will not. I don't have plans actually. I have a session of work tomorrow, and probably will help at my office with some activities that we have. So Sunday will be a chill Sunday, watching RuPaul Drag Race most likely, and that will be all. Back to you, Santi.
Thank you. Decentralized. You want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you guys again. Last time I think we spoke, I was in finishing up my time in Valencia. It was short but sweet, but now I'm back in sunny Germany. Surprisingly, it's actually quite hot. I just got back from a run. I'm gonna go. A friend of mine, she's moving to Frankfurt, which is like an hour away. So we're gonna go and move her in and drink some apple wine, and yeah, kind of enjoy a little bit of the summer as things kind of opened up a bit here. You just have to get sort of tested, but there's a million of them, and it's quite straightforward. And yeah, just looking forward to this conversation. Over.
All right. I think Libby is missing. Libby, what are the plans for the weekend?
Hello. I don't know. It's looking all gray and rainy here. I think maybe
Oh,
just staying home and maybe seeing some friends, but nothing crazy.
okay.
And I'll pass back to you.
Thank you. My plans for the weekend, I'm going to be working on a new project related with NFTs and wine tomorrow. And Sunday, I'm going to try to relax a little bit. That's the plans for the weekend.
And drink
I'll let
some
you
wine.
know. Yeah, I'll let you know as I progress. But it's looking promising. Okay, let's see. We have the agenda. There's two main things I wanted to discuss, or three main things I wanted to discuss today. Well, it's not really a discussion. The first one is try to getting that we've all the params that we voted that were missing on some of those legal docs. I added them all on the hatching proposal, but there's some of them that are missing. I added them all on the agenda. Just if you, Sean, can take a look and make sure that I'm not missing any of those. I think I put them all there, and we can go together through that and make sure that all the params are integrated in those documents and all the links required. I think that we have everything. We may be missing a little link or some link here or there, but the params through voting should be all clear, and we should be able to put them there. That was the first point. Then we have missing from the last meeting that document that we were thinking on regarding the any content that any member of the DAO may post on a third-party service, or that someone not even belonging to the DAO may be using any content like brand or logo or whatever, or just copying and pasting some content from the forum and putting it somewhere else. I don't know how's that, but it'd be nice to have some, I don't know. We discussed that. I don't know where we are at with that document. If you've been able to think about it.
I have, it's coming along. I just haven't been able to. But by the time we have the next meeting, we should have it for sure. And then I've already started looking around for the places where I think params stuff needs to go to left blank. It's not just a few documents. It's like a few other places as well. And so I'll make sure that happens over the course of the next week.
All right. I added them on the agenda, on today's agenda points.
Yeah.
I finished one, which is the hatch terms, I think. The hatch proposal terms, okay? Which is the one that we needed the most, because it's the phase that we're going to be jumping in. But we need to go over all of them. All right. The last thing that was on the agenda for today is the covenant. And Libby proposed that yesterday, and I think that's probably going to be the main focus of the group for the following meetings. And I'd love if you can just introduce that, Libby, so we can start thinking how to work on that.
Sure. So we passed this proposal to use Celeste. Celeste is an arbitrator that will act whenever we have a dispute that escalates in the... So the voting apps are both going to be disputable. They have that configuration now because it's an upgrade of conviction voting, and it's the version of OneHive that we're using. And this gives us the ability to dispute any proposal that we think it's not aligned with our mission, vision, and values. And every time a proposal is disputed, it can be resoluted by the challenger and the disputed, or it can escalate into like a court system like Celeste. Sam is here. He can probably explain better.
Hello.
But then, yeah, do you want to catch it, Sam? To explain.
Yeah, Libby was presenting Celeste before we jump into the covenant. Do you wanna give your explanations here?
Actually, this is I don't know how to start. This is a layer that we put on top of the TEC Commons. So in some way we are losing some sovereignty. This is something that it has to be clear. Once we have this, Celeste will be able to cancel any voting or conviction voting, but because Celeste is going to do whatever we want it to do, it should be fine. It's a kind of protection for the people who is in the beginning of the DAO, for protecting for the people who can come next, that think that actually there are two ways to say that. This is the manifesto, the manifesto-based organization in which we write a manifesto right now that we want to make it sure that it will be applied in the future. So whatever happens, the DAO will have these principles, and this is what we are right now. So people who is entering the DAO knows that, and even if there is a whale that comes with a lot of money and buys a lot of governance, they cannot do what they want. They have to comply with this covenant. This is one way to see that. But if we have a very permissive covenant, then it is just a way to make sure that nobody is using the funds of TEC for things that are not good for humanity in general. I mean, it can be a way to prevent things like, I don't know, funding wars. I don't know, whatever. We need some kind of moderation at the end in any proposal or in any forum post. So this is the way that we can moderate the proposals of the DAO without having a central admin. So we can see that in two ways. We can do a very strict and specific covenant that it acts as a kind of constitution, or we can do something that is more like One Hive did. Like we are a very inclusive community. We will not allow any kind of harassment and any kind of you specify which are the bad behaviors that you can have in a community, and then this is all. You let the future of the community very open, and this is what we can decide in this covenant.
Can you just give a little bit of explanation of, like, for instance, someone who's not even a member of the Hajj, it's not even in the TEC right now, and he jumps in, I don't know, a year from now, would he be able to launch a dispute on Celeste, challenge
Yes,
a proposal on Celeste?
Yes. The process is anyone, even if they don't have TEC, can. Yeah, I don't know if you need TEC. Probably you need TEC. Yeah, you need TEC because it has to be used as collateral. So when somebody is disputing something in Celeste, it is because there is a kind of disagreement between the covenant of the DAO and the thing that is happening. And it can be anyone, actually. Even people who is not in the DAO, they can buy TEC and put it as collateral for that specific dispute. And if they win the dispute, they earn. So I think that they earn some TEC doing that, and they can sell the TEC after that. It can be.
Excuse me. I understand they earn plus the proposal doesn't go forward.
Yes.
If it's a proposal or it's a voting on the conviction voting process.
The person who opposes on Celeste has to post collateral, and then the proposer who's having something challenged
has to meet it.
Has to match it. Mm-hmm. And whoever wins keeps the whole pot. And so hopefully that aligns the incentives, well, we hope, correctly.
Is it limited? Or is it a fixed amount, for example?
My understanding, Seb, is that it's a fixed amount, but the community can change that. I'm assuming at any point going forward in the future. So we could say it's 500 TECs, to oppose. We may decide then that everyone's just opposing every proposal, right? That passes. And we go, well, that's not exactly what we want either. So we raise it up to 1,000. And then we say, now you have to really dislike it to oppose it. So my understanding is that there is a staked amount now. Whether or not it stays that amount or changes, that's up to how the community deals with it in the future.
Yeah, I was just thinking because you don't want a situation where people don't, you can post any amount and then you could just sort of basically frighten the person into, who might not have the wherewithal to stake that amount to actually hold their challenge. It seems like it's very pro-litigant in a way.
Yeah. I think
it is not happening. There is only one amount that is decided by the community. It's not like I put something and I decide what I put. This is chosen by the community, and it's also in a stable amount. So even if, let's say that, imagine that it is one honey at the beginning, and honey doesn't worth anything. It's just worth $10, right? And then honey skyrockets, and you can specify, okay, it's always $100 in honey. So it is the amount of honey is adjustable. You still have to pay in TC in that case, but the amount of TC changes varying on the price of TC.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm just thinking
so
more like if you won the proposal, for example, like your proposal passes, someone challenges it, they pay the fixed amount, but now you have to pay the exact same fixed amount to defend the proposal that actually already passed. So it's an equal risk while you're actually sitting on the side of the proposal that passed by the community under the quorum and voting rules. So just something I just think is interesting. I'm just trying to comport that with, Ostrom's principles is universal dispute resolution and mediation. So to allow it to be really, people should just have the ability to dispute. But I was just wondering if that's fair to make the defending party post the same amount.
It can be chosen actually. The action amount and the challenge amount are different values.
You could do different values. That's cool.
If it turns out in different iterations, it's going to be learn and change.
I get it. Yeah.
Because in Celeste right now for One Hive, there's only been one dispute, and that was a test dispute. And so basically it'd be the equivalent if Livy said, I'm going to use Livy use an example because you would never do this. If Livy said after the hatch, hey, there's now 100,000 TEC tokens. Let's give Livy 99,000 of them. And Livy's really popular and people really like her. And so the proposal passes. Then we would expect, hopefully, a dispute come out of that. But that's all that's happened in One Hive was a test dispute that basically looked at.
Or there's a collusion, like there's some sort of or like allegation of collusion, right?
Yeah, it's kind of to your point. There's to the extent that we think there's unfairness that the proposer, who has a past proposition, has to stake an equal amount. Is there anything really stopping someone from basically funding that? Especially given that the proposal passed, it could happen. We're gonna have to see how this goes.
What's the burden of proof?
To my knowledge, it's gonna be vote of the way Celeste works is if 3 people are drafted that are they're called keepers in Celeste. And so they've staked a certain amount of honey in Celeste. If they get randomly selected, then they vote. What standard there is, I don't think there is one. There's no, it has to be a preponderance of the evidence or it has to be beyond a reasonable. There's no standard. It's just 3 people mediating basically a decision.
You would think at least it would be preponderance of the evidence if the proposal passed. Like at least it could be below preponderance of the evidence.
I'm really curious to see how it goes because it's what you're describing now is sort of how the keepers relate to each other and go, well, how do we consistently reach predictable decisions, because if it's just 3 random people that are chosen and they consistently apply a different criterion, it becomes hard to predict what happens in dispute resolution, which is not ideal.
I think
I'm sorry. There is one extra thing, that is that if the decision can be appealed, and every time that it gets appealed, more people are selected randomly. Not only so new people is getting selected and selected and selected until every time that you are appealing, you have to provide more collateral. But at the end, you can even choose everyone who is staking at the.
It could theoretically look like a jury did, 2,500 years ago in Athens, where it was everyone that had the ability to vote is literally on the jury. And so it's a little bonkers, but the appeals process kind of looks like, I don't know if you're familiar with en banc hearings in the US, but if you go up on appeal, right, so you have your judge, they make a decision, maybe they get it wrong, right? It happens, even with standards, it happens. And so you go on appeal, now you got 3 appellate judges that are reviewing it, and they make a decision, and maybe they get it wrong. You can ask that appellate court, hey, can you draft? Sometimes it's 9, sometimes it's 11. Number varies, but you can have an even larger group of people make that determination. I think it's a really interesting way to kind of protect against not just collusion, but just bad decisions. But I still don't think it's a criterion for this is how you defend a proposal, or this is how we know the covenant of the community has been broken. And I think that's going to have to develop over time. I don't think we're going to be able up front to say this is what it has to be. I think we can say this is what it should be. This is what we think would be a great idea. I'd love to see some people write about it. But until it's in practice, I don't know. Because I don't know how works when you don't submit evidence. Like, how do you submit?
Yeah, well, that was going to be my question, because I did a report on Aragon, right? A little analysis. I'm looking at you have to, right? They had a separate token just for staking to be a juror, because the jurors were also, the jurors, they call them jurors, but let's say these, what do you call them, representatives? Basically the arbitrators.
Keepers, yeah.
Right? That they also get they're getting like, how are they incentivized? Are they incentivized by, they also get part of the staked amount?
No, they don't get a part of the staked amount of the objection. They do stake in order to become a keeper. So I think in one hive, it's like a minimum of 5 honeys. I could be wrong. Maybe it's more. And
I think it's less.
It may be less. It may be less. Maybe half. I don't know. But they have to stake it to be a keeper, and then they earn an APY from staking. I think every month. So that's the incentive to theoretically, stay a keeper if there's no other motivation than just,
What is the risk of a keeper?
You're staking the honey, so you don't have access to it. So you locked up some honey, and then
but through the dispute, is there any risk
for the arbitrators?
No? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can lose your honey. Like if for example if we're not dispute, like me, Sam, and you, Sean, and you both think one thing, and then I bought another one different than you, like my money goes away to you.
Oh, your staked amount? Oh, I think that's right. So the concern is that if you vote against the consensus of the group, you're at risk of losing what you staked. Oh, right.
Not everything.
Right. Right. Is it a quarter or a half?
It's a revenue stream for the top.
Yeah.
And if all the jury decides one thing, and then the decision is appealed, and the bigger jury decides something else, the first jury also loses.
I would like to say like my ideas around all this discussion, and like I think that our covenant should be coherent to our cultural build and our legal strategy. So I think that we have been like very cautious and very like we have been building very well defined boundaries over the process that we have been doing. So I think that the covenant should have also well defined boundaries. And from the side of gravity, like I am super excited about starting like to outreach One Hive, because like who knows, we can start like training these keepers in mediation skills, and that way we can also like certify some kind of yeah, skills, and to do that activity. And also like I think that gravity and celeste can work in tandem, and gravity being like a previous step. But I see celeste very useful in certain situations. And for me, it was like very clear in one case where like MakerDAO after March 13 like had a problem, and like liquidated a lot of people. And like there was then a community vote to do something about it. And like on the last time, Wales like changed the vote, and that was before Celeste. So anyone, there was no way to dispute that vote that was taken by Wales and not by the community. So yeah, I think it's very useful for specific cases where there could be like sabotage for a proposal. But the idea of a proposal to be a proposal, and to be in the place of voting, is that we can have a previous work of like making the proposal to be aligned to our values and what we want, and yeah, what we want from to fund and to work on the community.
Go ahead, Seb.
I don't see the relation between keepers and gravity, because keepers only have a very short amount of time in order to give their vote. I see the connection between gravity and Celeste as mostly by the covenants of the different DAOs. I think that gravity can do a good work on helping writing good covenants, good codes of conduct. But keepers are not mediating. Keepers are just reading covenants and reading about the proposals and then deciding. So they are not actually. They don't even know who people are, or even because they can be anonymous addresses. Just wanted to say that.
I kind
I
of
think there.
You wanted?
Sorry.
ahead, Libby.
Yeah, I think there is a point on like to what Juan said, that yeah, people will be looking very quickly into these things, and they will have the covenant and the defense of the challenged proposal, right? The arguments of the two parts to also look at. And I think there is some exercises that it is helpful that people like that have, like impartiality, like interpreting text as like for example, nonviolent communication teaches a lot about seeing what are the needs behind what the person is speaking. And then in that case, it could be something useful to ensure impartiality. So when someone is reading something, they don't immediately get triggered about the way someone wrote, but they can try looking, like interpreting a little bit deeper there. So I think it can be help. I hear what you're saying, Sam, that it's two separate instances. But if some jurors are up to it. I mean, it's like kind of building a bigger ecosystem of people that want to create this awareness when participating in communities. So I think it won't hurt if that is available there, but it's just for whoever wants to get involved with.
Can you? Yeah, I agree with Libby. One other question: can you avoid to vote if you're selected to do so? Can you just not vote?
Yes.
Okay.
But if you
I
refuse to
think
vote, you're definitely going to lose what you staked, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think not. I think that you are not losing. I don't know which is the mechanism.
yeah, I'd have to
Yeah,
double check abstaining from the vote.
Yeah, I
Under
think
Aragon,
there
you
is
lose
like
it.
a slight penalization, as far as I understand. I think that you might have the option to reject it, but I know that definitely if you don't answer, if you don't reply, like I think like within 48 hours of a call, you get penalized.
Yeah, I think there's no penalty if you say I can't decide this within the time frame. I think that's fine. I think then it just goes and selects another keeper. But if you are a keeper and you don't make a decision, I think the penalty still applies. If you're, I mean, unless everyone also doesn't do anything, in which case you'll lose on appeal, I guess.
I was just thinking on the case of someone just being a jury or a keeper for the staking benefit and not participating
Yeah,
at
I
all.
think it'll punish them over time. But a lot of people, depending on, because your likelihood of being picked is related to how much you stake. So the more you stake, the more likely you're to be picked. So the more you lock up and don't have access to honey, then the more likely you are. I don't know how high the percentages go, but like, I think it's, I think I think I did half a honey to stake, and I think I have less than a 1 in 100 chance of being chosen as a keeper. But I also,
And you can't be a keeper. You can't be a keeper or even staked keeper and a disputing party.
I don't think, Seb. What if it was my proposal on TEC?
Yeah, right. Because you can imagine that would be a
It
little
shouldn't.
conflict of interest.
Yeah, it shouldn't. But in theory, even if you were, you run the risk of being punished if everyone still doesn't like, if the other people don't like your decision, right? Like, you still run a risk.
But my understanding, at least I only know Aragon. I meant to look at Celeste better, but they wall them off because you don't want collusion between, because they basically use the wisdom of the crowd game theory, because each what's it called, representative, or I'm sorry, the keeper doesn't know isn't supposed to know who the other keepers are, and is supposed to just guess what they believe to be the wisdom of the crowd. That's the whole probabilistic approach that at least in Aragon takes. So if they take the same thing, they shouldn't know who it is, which is why I was wondering if you could be both. You put a proposal, and then you stake a lot right before you would. I don't know if the system would recognize that the parties would be the same.
But it's capped. You can only stake 29 honeys. Like, even if you have 1,000, you can only 29. So it's like to have an equilibrium to don't abuse the system.
Right, but you could in theory, again, I think this is just what lawyers do, and they think, what's the worst case scenario, and start playing this game of like, well, this is how I would be an evil genius and try to cheat the system. I guess in theory you could have one wallet where you have your TEC and you make your TEC proposals, right? And we don't use OneBright or any identification system to know who is, an identified individual. So I have one wallet, so I make proposals, and then a whole separate wallet, in which case I have honey to be a keeper, and then I have to hope that if I stake enough honey, my chances of being a keeper increase, that if I have a proposal, I get chosen as a keeper as well.
Yeah, but
you
still
have
you
to
have to
stay.
stay.
Right.
You have to put your
Correct.
money
And then
there
still,
and stay
I
there.
have to
Mhm.
be in line with the community in order to not risk anything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's interesting. Again, we just have to see. So I started writing a covenant. So I think in the proposal terms document, which was the last big document we did, I started drafting a covenant, knowing that we would have to vote on a covenant, but I was on a roll and just writing a lot and said, well, let's just start writing a covenant. And I think I did something pretty. I'm trying to thread a needle between like, I don't want to centralize and make a decision that says this is how it should be, and this is the standard of evidence, and this is how these are good proposals and these are bad proposals. But at the same time, it's got to be clear enough that people know if they're making proposals that are not consistent with the community's values. So I don't think it looks like a constitution, in my opinion. I don't think our covenant should look like one. Maybe it develops over time and we get a little more stuff that's like, this is really something that always crosses the line. But I think at the beginning, I think there's going to have to be a little bit of give and take of, we're going to have to see what people dislike about proposals and what proposals are really disfavored beyond just threatening, harassing, stealing for your own financial benefit, those kinds of things. I want 1 million TECs so that I can, I don't know, build a statue of myself. So
do you want to share what you have and we can look at it?
Yeah, it's in. If you go, I think it's in the agenda. If you look under, I think the document is the proposal terms. These were the terms for people making proposals.
Let me check if I can screen here and we can share it.
And also, I don't know how it will affect on TC, but on like for having, you cannot have the address, like, because it's linked to your right ID. I mean, if you somehow can cheat on right ID, you would have twice, but normally you don't want.
For being Celeste, they know who you are. I agree. But TC doesn't have the same thing. So I could have a separate address for TC, and nobody knows that I'm making the proposal. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely,
Is it?
Celeste who I am. I agree because the ID.
You could
Okay, so
whitelist keepers. You could think of having a whitelist keepers, maybe go through gravity training or something common, so you can. It is slightly less centralized, maybe, but you could think of who's the keepers.
yeah, but you might have to do that on both ends, like not just on this last end, but also on the TEC end. You have to link TEC identity with their Celeste identity. Community pledge. This might be the. At the time I was drafting it, we just knew it was going to be proposed, but
Yeah, it was approved, the proposal, and I think the covenant should be like mostly based on the mission, vision, and values that we had, because a lot of
yes, please
there
get
was
in
a
there.
lot of eyes into it,
Yes,
and
add
maybe
to
if we
it,
have
please.
that as the base.
Yes,
Something I thought it was really helpful from. No, it's amazing that you started it. That's great. We should definitely look at it. And I think the most interesting thing from the Aragon covenant that Sam shared was they had descriptions about the words they were using. So they had a little glossary for like when we use must, should, what we mean, like this, and that. And I think that's very helpful. And get like, I would love to get your lawyer eyes on like, is the language we're using ambiguous?
Right.
When people are looking into this without knowing us as people or as an organization, is there like what are the words representing, and how people could find loopholes into it?
Absolutely. And so I mean you can see this is purely just a step one basis for it. That first section describes kind of what the purpose of the pledge is. Then it goes into the pledge. It describes our standards. But this was just something meant to we knew we needed something like this. Or at least my understanding is that we were going to reach a point where we would want something that described this for the community. And yeah, there is no pride of authorship here. So get in there, start changing stuff around, and then we start going over it and we go, yeah, this word, when we say should, do we mean it in the technical sense, or do we mean it in the sort of common usage? When we say must, do we mean that they absolutely have to do it and there's no wiggle room? Yeah, we can discuss all those things. Because go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, lawyers love I think just also be clear what you need the a good definition base for, because the nice thing about this model is it's not really like a litigation. You're not bound to all these rules. It really is like this community standard. So because of that, you do want to have the principles absolutely of the community. And when those questions are unclear, that's where you need definitions. But I would, because they're ultimately going to be going with this wisdom of the crowd, what they believe everyone will find just. And of course, that's appealable to a larger group. So they will ultimately have community values embedded. So it's more, you can do it a little bit more principle based than being so lawyerly about the words. Unless that's an area you absolutely don't want ambiguity. There are certain things you really want clear. So it just, whereas should and must, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, things like, not doing proposals that violate the law where you're from, right? Like, we don't want people doing that. But you're right. I think there's a strong movement, even in legal areas, where we overwrite things, we overdefine things, we unintentionally, by trying to be clear, end up creating more ambiguity around terms because we can't. By this point, we're out of the pledge. This is back into just the general issues around the community. It ends on the on-chain enforcement subsection. So yeah, I mean, logically, we'll have to reach a point where we say, yeah, do some terms need to be defined? Then we'll define them. And if some terms just need to be a little bit looser because that's just the best we can do, then that's the best we can do. But I think it has to be capable of evolving over time to meet the needs of the community, but it also needs to be kind of static in respect too, so that the community knows what you're dealing with. Those are two really difficult things to achieve at one time. Something that changes with the community and the community's goals, and something that kind of is static and says, no, this is what the community is. And holding on to both those concepts at the same time, I don't think is easy. And that's why, the more eyes we get on it and the more input we get into the document, the better.
Yeah, I was going to say also, you maybe want to consider in the covenant actually how material changes to the covenant should be handled, if that's the proposal, right?
Yeah.
Because that would be a critical point, because it would become too self-referential. So you might really want to think on those. Those are more constitutional questions as to how you would update the covenant in a proposal that might be then disputed, and how that should be looked at. Because that
Santi can tell you every document I've drafted, there's usually a sentence in there that says, the community may change this, by the way. So, this is just what we're talking about at the time this document is created, but that can change. And yeah, that's as true for the covenant as for anything else.
Yeah, but I feel like also it's important, like it's going to be like very, very, very hard to, it should be very hard to change. Like Semnem was telling yesterday, like, like at the beginning, like the community, when there is no stake in there, it's more value aligned. But then when people start to put money in, then, like people cares more about the price going up than the actual mission, vision, and values that the original people were in there. So I feel it's also, you need to find a point where, like the real goals are there, they don't move, like they can be moved.
Well, you're right, and I think that's the way where I see gravity interacting with on-chain enforcement, even though they're not the same thing. What gravity does is sort of permeate all these other sub communities and make sure that they're kind of consistent with the community's values. And so it's a way of kind of spreading, this is consistent or this is inconsistent with what the community thinks in a way that's less adversarial than formally using Celeste.
This is sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
No, there was
But
something
this
in
is,
the
I
Aragon.
see.
Yeah, I mean, this is
So-
Aragon and One Hive's covenant.
Yeah, there was something in the Aragon Covenant that I think it's interesting for that point too, that they separated into this are unchangeable like points and these are changeable points. And we might not want to put like unchangeable, but just a
harder.
signal for whoever is the juror whenever a proposal is submitted to change the covenant, if they have the covenant as a base for judging that proposal, it might be good to put like if there is a proposal to change this section, it should be looked carefully. If there's a proposal to change this section, that we should give room and space for change based on like this and this principles, something like that.
Absolutely. And
I agree with Libby, but I understand the point of view of Septimus, but at the same time, even a constitution has to be able to be changed on a country, and we shouldn't be any different. I mean, the community is going to evolve, and if sooner or later the community decides to change the mission, it should be able to do it. At the end of the day, those that are involved in the community are the ones that will have the power to change it, not those that are not in the community. Of course, there can be a whale that jumps in and buys a lot of TECs. But if they do, they will have the power to change it because it's the way it is. And there's going to be a lot of other members that hold TEC. It's not going to be easy for just one person. And even if he does, he will be investing a lot of money into the community to do that, or to have the power to try to do that. And it's licit that he has the power at least to launch that proposal. And then the community will vote and decide if they pass it or not. Then there's Celeste who can challenge that change. So I don't fear leaving the door open for any change. But I agree with Libby. We should mention that there's changes and there's changes. And some things need to be taken care and looked at very carefully, because they are linked to the values of the constitution of the DAO. Other things are not that critical, I would say.
And as we draft this pledge, as we and I call it a pledge, we can call it whatever we want. But as we draft the pledge, I think we in theory will be able to pull out and separate the things that we think ought to be harder to change, and the things that we think are more superficial is not a great word, but it's the first one that comes to mind, that are easier to change. But that's just going to be a function of the more eyes in the document, and as we start talking about, these are the things that we really like. Celeste is there, and we think Celeste is a critical aspect of the TEC community, right? Because it protects against people trying to speculate and take advantage of the TEC token. then because it gives voices in the community a say in things that that are based on their involvement in the community as opposed to just owning a lot of TEC, then we say, look, changes to Celeste need to be harder to make than just an easy vote. Hey, we're going to change Celeste, and now there's only going to be one keeper and no appeals. And there may be other aspects where we go, and then changing the dashboard, no big deal, right? So if we want to vote and change the dashboard and add a dark feature so that people can see better at night when they're on, fine, that's easy, that's not hard. But we're going to find that figuring that out is not necessarily all going to happen at once. We're not necessarily going to figure it out right now, as try as we might. We'll get a few things though. I think we'll be able to identify a few things that are mission critical and a few things that we think, that should be easily changeable. But then the rest of it's going to evolve over time. And it's going to be a result of more back and forth. And as we see what happens in other communities, it's not just what's going to happen in TEC. It's going to be things we see happen in One Hive and things we happen in Aragon and go, we should protect ourselves against this problem. We didn't even know it was a problem. We didn't even know it was going to be an issue.
We're running out of time, and I would love to focus a little bit on the coming weeks, the work for the coming weeks. Do you guys think it'd be a good idea to next meeting have a working session on the covenant altogether? If we can have, if you can give a little structure, a little bit, it's already almost there, Sean. But if you can give it a little structure, or maybe if you want to check and compare it to the ones that you've been looking at from One Hive and from Aragon, and then we might be able to focus and maybe not finish it on the document and have it pretty much defined together on the meeting in 15 days. That'd be great. All right. And then Sean, if you want to review those documents, I can give you a hand if you want on that. And I think those are the two main points that I wanted to discuss in today's meeting. So I think we've just taken the steps after your first pledge, that first document or that first pledge that you created. We should be able to, together with the documents from Aragon and from One Hive and any others that we might be able to provide from other communities, we should be able to end up with something there. But one of the things that I'd love, and through the discussion of today, is that I believe that all the talks that we've had here is something that anyone in the community should be able to know. They should be able to know this is the way we vote the proposal. This is the way we vote a conviction voting change on the community. This is what happens after a period of time, which, as I understand, there is a period of time you can just challenge it through Celeste, and this is how it's going to work. And you can appeal if you don't like the ending result of the initial dispute, and how this escalates. Like on any any legal process, you can do this. If the response of the judge is not making you feel happy, you have the right to appeal and all these processes. So everyone completely understands that anything can be changed, but that doesn't mean necessarily that's going to be an easy thing to change, and it's not going to be a quick process at all.
It looks like we have a cool demo to do next week, right? There is a Celeste in Rinkeby, and we are working on deploying a garden for TC this week. Probably for next community call, we can show a garden in Rinkeby that is for TC. We can upload a covenant, and we can rule based on this covenant. And we can also have honey for Rinkeby. Everyone who wants to be a keeper of Celeste and rule our own disputes.
Dispute and voting and yeah, that'd be a great testing. Libby?
Yeah, I have a quick question for Sam. I came up in the last SoftGov call that Nate asked about the risks of what could go wrong if we use Celeste, and Griff thought of a possible attack that could be like pretty rare to happen. But what if many jurors just hate the TEC and they want to sabotage everything that it's happening here? So they would be able to dispute every to dispute all the good proposals and to continue to cancel them, and that would slow down all the processes from the DAO.
Yeah.
They couldn't actually like do anything else than that, but they could like stop the DAO basically.
Exactly.
So then
Yeah.
Griff was saying that a possible solution could be creating a voting instance that doesn't have disputable voting in it, and with the sole purpose of disinstalling Celeste.
Okay. Oh,
So
I think that
it'd be like
it
a
introduces.
nuclear option to remove
The red button.
if Celeste became a
The
problem.
red button.
But
More things to
it
think about.
introduces more. It introduces more problems that it solves, because then we have a way for whales to disable Celeste if they don't want it. So it's I think that the solution is worse than the problem, because the problem is not that high because of right ID. There is a cap in which whales in Honey can. No one in Honey could be able to make Celeste work in this way, because you have a cap in it. You can only stake. Well, it's a lot of honey still. It's 29 honey, but there is this maximum. And
Sam,
there is no one who is.
One person couldn't do it, but if you had 20 people doing it, or 50 people, like if you really coordinated an attack, you could beat Celeste that way, because one person can't be a keeper more than once. I agree. And you're limited by how much honey you can even have as a keeper. But if a bad actor got 20 friends and then staked all of their honey, right, sent them enough honey so that they could become kind of big time keepers, then you do I don't think we should get rid of Celeste, by the way, and I don't think we should have a nuclear option. But it is kind of fun to think about the potential problems.
But then you appeal it. It gets appealed and it loses.
At the end of the day, what are they gaining?
They would
not too much. And what?
Yeah,
No.
you're right. Because the more appeals you have, look, I think the easiest way to protect Celeste is everyone become a keeper. As many people become keepers, as possible, because it means that as long as we can keep appealing bad actors' engagement, eventually we get to a point to where we supersede their ability to be bad actors, because we're appealing to the larger community. But that only works if people.
Plus, if the amount of money you're risking or you're staking, it's not worth the value you get from just stopping. Right. What's the use of it? People don't act for. They act for any any outcome, not for just stopping things and not getting any outcome and risking the money.
We should think about these kinds of things, like these kinds of attacks and collusion and.
But couldn't you also fix it in the covenant? Like you could, like going to Livy's point, like having definitions on at least the things you really want to find, like immaterial change, material change, fundamental change. And if you capture those 3 points, you explain which ones are linking to each of those. At the appeal level, then you really can clarify that, because if someone is trying to call something immaterial that's fundamental and push it through and then try to overtake the the system, I mean, especially if the community is resilient, that a large swath of people are staking as keepers, it'll be more robust. If no one cares, you will have a more vulnerability, at least in the first instance, right? Because it can be
Well,
taken
guys,
over. So it's something about
we're at the top of the hour.
sorry.
Yeah, we're at the top of the hour. Some of us have to jump into other meetings. Let's discuss all these in the next meeting. I think it's a great discussion. It's good that all these things come up now that we're going to be working on the covenant, and we can foresee potential behaviors from the community, and try to think about ways to prevent what we
I just want to say one more thing. This case will be like Evil Celeste. It could happen, of course, but it is a case in which we don't have a Celeste to prevent this kind a Celeste for Celeste. So it's a it's a problem. It could happen, of course, but it's a thing that we cannot solve in the covenant, and I don't know. I think that it's you see which is the problem, right? We don't have a Celeste for Celeste.
Okay, let's think about it, and let's think on the consequences if that happens. Because from my point of view, it's not that easy to happen, because the outcome that these people will get is almost nothing. So. But anyway, it's good to have the discussion and try to get the different options that may happen. All right, thank you all for coming, and I'll see you in 15 days. Bye.